Hello everybody, this is Jerry Mateo within the DAW. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you what I do when I'm sent a 2-track drum recording. And that's basically saying when I'm sent drum tracks that aren't stems or multi-tracks. Now, oftentimes I try to record them myself, but if the budget is not there, the artist will just send me the stems or the multi-track. But in those very rare instances where they don't even have the budget to get the drummer, to send them a multi-track, we're stuck with a 2-track. And oftentimes that can be a little bit tricky if the drums don't sound good. But if they do, there is a lot of things you can do to really fine tune them and really make them hit exactly how you want. So I have the drum tracks right here. I have everything bypassed and we're going to listen to it. Sounds good. Let's take it out of solo and put it in the mix.
I ain't no average soul.
Cool. So there's a couple of things that I'm hearing that I didn't really like. And let's keep in mind that this is a demo that hasn't been fully flushed out. Now, the bass we're going to keep, the keys we're going to keep, and the drums are going to stay. But the vocals are all scratch vocals. There's going to be a lot added to it and a lot edited. And then there's going to be guitars and other instrumentation that's going to be added. But even though that is the case, it has been decided that the drums are going to be a very big focus point for this track, meaning that this kind of very flat and neutral sounding drum track isn't really going to cut it. So this is the processing that I did, and I'm going to show you step by step in real time how I did it. But let's just take a listen to it really quickly. Now, that does sound like a completely different drum set. And as you can see, it's literally 4 plugins and a plate reverb. In this case, I'm using the UAD Pure Plate. This is their native version. I get the native versions of most of them for free. That's what we're using. So let's actually bypass all of this and we'll go over the processing chain that I did. So the first thing I do is I listen to the drums and I see what don't I think is really benefiting this track. And for that, I think we really do need to listen, take it in and out of solo and just hear what isn't really cutting through it and what sounds a little weak. So let's start it off. Okay. So what I'm hearing right off the bat is the drums kind of have a very airy sound, which is good. I kind of like that lively sound, but the snare has a very thin, almost kind of puny sound, and it doesn't really have any crack. It's just more like a psh, and there's a weird frequency in the upper mid-range. Yeah, you can hear like a psh, psh. I know it's a very detailed description, but listen, it literally sounds like a psh, psh. Right there. You could really hear it right there. It's this weird, annoying frequency. It's a resonance that I'm not liking. Now, the kick drum, I like the kick drum. It sounds good, but because it's going to be the focus and the bass isn't really going to be that crazy in this song. We really do need the bass of the kick drum to stand out. So I'm going to do something to make that really pop out and almost sound like it's blooming more, like it's sustaining while also controlling that reverb tail. So let's start off. The first thing I do with all of my tracks is instantiate an instance of console 1. The reason for this is because when I'm mixing at the studio or at home, I always bring my console 1 or there's one provided there. And in this case, I'm on my laptop. I'm not home at the studio. So I'm just having this here in standalone mode, mainly because I always utilize the drive and character for every single channel, this is going to give me just the subtlest amount of saturation. But I find spreading it across the whole session tends to make things sound a little bit nicer. So next, we're going to go for Transgressor. Now, this is from Boz Digital Labs. This is a plugin that came out quite a long time ago. This is their version 2, and this is a Transient EQ. When you EQ the sustain, you kind of actually reduce the sustain. So you can make a certain frequency shorter while making the transient pop out more. It's like a very powerful transient designer. And I know there's other things like the envelope from Elysia, which is a plugin alliance plugin. And when this thing came out, it was fantastic. I bought this thing right away. And I just keep going back to Transgressor. I know that there's other stuff. I think, what is it? Eventide or someone made another plugin that does something similar now, and it's an amazing EQ. But to be honest, I'm not going to spend money on something I don't really need. So the way that this works, we have the transient and we have the sustain. Let's listen to the sustain. First thing I want to do is find that weird frequency. And I'm going to kind of do this nice wide dip. Next, I'm going to have a very resonant low shelf and a high shelf. Cool. Bypass this, go to the transient section. Now my goal here is to actually increase the punch. While also reducing the boxiness. And I also want to kind of enhance the snap. So with that little EQ done, notice we're kind of doing a similar thing, but in different frequencies for the cuts. Let's listen to it. Okay, I feel like we can do a little bit more. If you listen to it before, we hear a lot of thin, kind of overly airy tones, almost a paper thin snare. With it on, and you can really hear the kick drum blooming out. It almost sounds like it's sustaining longer, and it kind of is. So next we're going to do a EQ. And my newest EQ of choice has become the Kirchhoff EQ. If you need something that has dynamic properties and you don't want to use Kirchhoff, you can use Pro Q3, which is from FabFilter. But this is pretty much my favorite digital style EQ. So we're going to use this to kind of finalize and massage the tone shaping. Some little lows. Get rid of some of the boxiness. Yeah, see? Nice and punchy. Now we're going to do something that's really unique to Kirchhoff EQ is we're going to utilize the sword EQ curve. So you can use the slope section, which will kind of shape the EQ curve a little bit. But if you use sword type, it kind of has a more rounded look to it. Kind of see it's not as aggressive, and it's really good at getting rid of resonant frequencies. So it's like a fine-tuned slope. Notice though that the sword doesn't have the slope modifier, so this is basically only for cutting resonances. Let's take a listen. Next, I want to enhance the snare a little bit. And let's get rid of some of that ugliness to it though. There we go. Really adding a lot of snap. Let's bypass everything. Sounds a lot punchier, a lot more like professional, a lot more polished. So we got rid of that weird tone, which is about 2K. It's 1.7. Next, I want to add some clipping. Now, the reason why I go for clipping is because a multiband compressor, as much as it would allow me to massage and control the dynamics, I don't need dynamic control. I need something that's going to make it sound punchy and snappy. So for that, I'm going to be using Pimax. Now, I actually learned about this plugin watching Paul Third's channel, which I think is just called Paul Third. And he did a review on this saying how this is very cool. It's like an alternative to the Oxford inflator from Sonics. And I just kind of bought it after watching that video and demoed it after, which you should never do. Demo it first. But it's fantastic. And I use it in a completely different way than he does. I actually don't find that it's a great Oxford inflator alternative. I find that it's a more powerful saturation tool, where Oxford is more like a very subtle, like trying to be enhancing thing. This is more for like tone shaping and enhancing with clipping, like slightly audible clipping. So you have controls of input, which is going to drive it more, output, which is going to be your output gain. You have your symmetric and asymmetric, as well as your finite, your clip, and your infinite. So this is basically going to be your different types of distortion. For this case, I'm going to go for asymmetric and go finite. And this is going to basically be your color for your bias. It's going to be colder or thinner, and then thicker and more aggressively distorted. You also have a width control, an input boost, but we're not going to use any of that. And the first thing that I'm going to do is band split mode. Now, what this is going to do is allow me to actually control the input and output gain of the thresholds of 3 separate bands, the lows, mids, and highs. And I can solo them out and really fine tune what I want it to be. So here we go. Cool. Next, I want to control how hard I'm going to be hitting this clipper. So I'm going to go for -6 on the low end. I'm going to go for +5. Let's try +6. +6. And for this, we'll do +4. And this is just a starting off point. I'm basically going to hit the plugin harder on these higher frequencies than I am at the lower frequencies, allowing me to clip a little bit more creatively. So let's bring this down. Let's bring this up. Now, let's bypass this. Listen to the snare and the hi-hat. The snare has a little bit more body, and the hi-hat actually sounds like it's a little bit more consistent in level. The low end is being clipped just a little bit, but it's not being hit super aggressively where it's overdoing anything. Let's start it out bypassed. Yeah, the snare just has a little bit more smack to it. So I think I'm going to fine tune this a little more. I'm going to hit it a little bit harder. There it is. That's what I want. Let's bypass it. Listen to the snare. And turn it on. That snare is really kind of just rocking out now. It sounds really aggressive and punchy. Now, I do think we're a little bit loud, so let's bypass it and see. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to add a gain plugin. We're just going to bring this down a little bit. That sounds fantastic. Let's take this out of solo. That sounds fantastic. It's very nice, very polished. And yeah, I did do a little bit different processing than I did in the original one that I did. I believe the original transgressor has actually a very similar curve. Just a little bit more fine tuning with this one. And I also did not do makeup gain compensation, which is probably why we had to bring down the level a little bit more. But yeah, it's a very similar processing. Let's check out my Kirchhoff EQ from the original take that I did and the new one. And this one pretty much looks almost the same. It's almost the same. I gotta say the EQ curve on this is pretty standard. And then finally we have the Pimax, which, taking a look at the original version of Pimax, I'm hitting it a little bit less hard. I have a little bit less of the slider all the way up, but I am using band split mode. I think the only real difference is, I'm hitting the low end a little bit harder and I'm not hitting the mids as much, and I'm cranking the highs. So it looks like we're getting a similar amount of saturation, but because we're doing so much more cranking, that it's not necessary to do so much gain compensation. Overall, it is a similar tone and I really do like it. If we bypass it, I actually see that we are a little bit louder with it bypassed, so we can bring this up. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was fun. This is how I go about processing a stereo drum recording. If I don't have the option to do a multi-track, I will do something which will allow me to control the transient detail, the general EQ with something that's very high quality. Kirchhoff EQ is honestly recommended on my end. And then something multi-band for saturation. You can use Ozone. You could use Saturn 2. I love Saturn 2. But I really like the way that Pimax works. It sounds fantastic. What is it? K-Clip from Kazarog. I have K-Clip version 2. I heard version 3 is fantastic, so that might work even better. And then I just have a gain plugin at the end to level match, which, to be honest, I might take out because I might do some fine tuning and really get it dialed in the way I want later on. Anyway, this is Jeremy Mateo. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.